In this video, we're going to look at two of our 6 trig functions, and this video is going to look at the sine and cosecant. And I want to start by looking at the sine function, and we're going to note this as sin for sine, and we're going to take the sine of theta. And when we think of a function in the past, we've looked at examples if we had something like f of x equals, let's say, 2x plus 3, and this is an example of a linear function. And here we're looking at sine of theta as a trig function. So I want you to realize here, just like here, f of x is representing our function, in this case, the straight line 2x plus 3, where 2 is the slope and 3 is the y-intercept. Here we're talking about our trig function sine. And don't overcomplicate this. All that this means is if we take the sine of theta, where theta is representing our angle, and over here, the angle could be represented by degrees, 0, 30, 45, 60, or 90, or the radians, 0, pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, all the way up to pi over 2. And right now, I'm just looking at the angles in the first quadrant. And of course, this would continue all the way around the circle, and this would be true for any angle. And the sine function is defined as the ratio of the y-coordinate divided by the radius. Okay, so if we look at this, what that means is if we were looking at our circle over here, we know that this is a unit circle, so we know here the radius of this particular circle is always going to be 1. Okay, so because this is the unit circle, the radius is always equal to 1. Then if we look at the sine of an angle, then we're going to look at this as finding the sine, and I'm going to start with the sine of, and I'm going to start with degrees, and a little bit later I'll go into the radians, but whether we said 0 degrees or 0 radians, it's going to be the same answer. So when we say we want to find the sine of 0 degrees, then we're saying if we go to 0 degrees, we want to look at what is the x or y coordinate, and the sine function is y over r. Well, what's the y coordinate? The y coordinate is 0, so that means we would have y coordinate 0 divided by the radius, which is simply 1. And if we take anything 0 divided by 1, then the answer is simply 0. So the sine of a 0-degree angle is equal to 0. And then if we go around the circle, I'm going to go through each one of these in the first quadrant. If we wanted to find the sine of the next angle, 30 degrees, then all we have to do is look at the y-coordinate, and over here the y-coordinate is 1/2. So essentially we would have 1/2 divided by the radius, which is 1, so the answer is simply 1/2. Now you're going to notice I'm going to, dividing here by 1, I'm just kind of emphasizing if the radius of the circle you were looking at was different, you would simply divide by that particular radius. Now, the next angles we go around, we have the sine of a 45-degree angle, and over here the y-coordinate is square root of 2 over 2, so the answer is going to be the square root of 2 over 2, and again that's over 1, so this is the sine of a 45-degree angle. And again, it's just looking at the ratio of the y-coordinate divided by the radius. So then if we move to the next one, which is the sine of 60 degrees, the y-coordinate would simply be square root of 3 over 2, so that is the answer. So basically what we're saying is when we plug in 60 degrees, we're going to get out the 60 degrees into the sine function, we get out a square root of 3 over 2. And then of course if we go to the top of the circle and we plug in the 90 degrees into the function sine of 90, your y-coordinate is 1, so the sine of 90 degrees is 1. So that's all it is for defining your sine function. Just remember, you're simply looking at the y divided by r. So you locate the angle, and then you pick out the y-coordinate and divide it by the radius of the circle. All right, so that's the sine function. For the cosecant function, And the abbreviation here is CSC. So the cosecant of your angle theta is simply going to be the reciprocal. Instead of y over r, it's r over y. So therefore, if I'm looking for the cosecant of 0 degrees, that's going to be the reciprocal. So that means instead of 0 over 1, it would be 1 over 0. And of course, we cannot divide by 0, so therefore it is undefined. So here, this function is undefined at 0 degrees. And that's kind of true if we have functions in the past we looked at. If you can't have division by 0, we would say it's undefined at that point. So here, this function as well is not defined at 0 degrees. And if we go around the circle, then we would have the cosecant of 30 degrees. And again, what we can look at is our y-coordinate, which is 1/2. And we can say, well, it's going to be 1/2, but because we already have the sine function, we know it's going to be the reciprocal. So instead of 1 over 2, it's going to be 2 over 1, or simply 2. So then if we look at the cosecant of 45 degrees, it's going to be the reciprocal here. So instead of square root of 2 over 2, it would be 2 over the square root of 2. Now, I don't really have a problem with this answer, but most likely you're going to see this rationalized so that we do not have the square root on the bottom. So you're going to see multiplying by the square root of 2 on top and bottom so that we would end up with 2 square root of 2 over 2, and then the 2's cancel, so we simply get the square root of 2. So the cosecant of a 45-degree angle would be equal to the square root of 2. And again, that's the ratio of r over y is equal to the square root of 2. So then if we look at the cosecant of a 60-degree angle, it's the reciprocal here. So it's going to be 2 over the square root of 3. And again, if we rationalize, in this case, we multiply by the square root of 3 on top and bottom, we would get 2 square root of 3 over 3, and that's going to be the answer. And then the last one is going to be pretty easy. The cosecant of a 90-degree angle, well, the reciprocal of 1 would be 1, or 1 over 1, which is simply 1. Now notice here, we're not looking at decimals. Most of the time, we want to leave the answer in this form. And that's because this has given us the square root of 2, or 2 square root of 3 over 3. That's given us an exact answer. We could certainly put that into the calculator and you'd have it a decimal, but then we would end up with an approximate answer. And most of the time we're looking at exact answers when they want us to evaluate some of these trig functions. Now there are cases when we're not able to find the exact answer and we have to approximate it with a decimal, and that's perfectly fine. So once again here, if we're looking at this sine function, it is simply defined as the y-coordinate divided by the radius, and then for cosecant is equal to r over y. It's the reciprocal, which is the radius divided by the y-coordinate. So there's 2 of our 6 trig functions, and the next video we're going to look at 2 more, and they're going to be kind of similar type properties, so you need to make sure you memorize the definition for these trig functions. So sine is basically your y value, okay, y over r, and cosecant is r over y. Definitely commit these functions to memory. The better you understand these, the easier this course will be for you.